tell us, Güneş. You're from Turkey, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And when did you arrive in Luxembourg?
I arrived in Luxembourg January 15th, 2021.
2021.
So
Okay.
almost exactly 4 years ago.
What brought you here in Luxembourg? Why? Why Luxembourg?
I'm in academia. I'm a lawyer. I do research on international law. And I was in Denmark at the time. I was applying for jobs basically all around Europe. And there was a very good research center here that I had known for a while, so I applied. And I got accepted, and that's why I came. Though applying for a job in Luxembourg wasn't entirely random, because I had been to Luxembourg multiple times before. I was visiting because of private reasons. So I was quite familiar with the city, so I had a sense of, can I make it there? Would I be happy in a city like that? So I knew what Luxembourg was like, and it was at such a moment in my life that I knew that what I needed was exactly a city like Luxembourg, a city proper, but also has these valleys in the middle, so you can basically get lost into the nature without necessarily going out of the city. If you just go to the Vallée de la Pétrus, you're immersed into the nature. So, that I remember very distinctly was one of the reasons why I was like, I can do it. It's a cute little city. It's one of the European capitals, as law and policymaker, people would like to say, European Union, etc. So, it was professionally and personally attractive at the time.
So you made a bit of due diligence before.
Yeah. It was unintended, it wasn't like, I had some prior experience and impression, and I will tell you, that was despite the fact that I lived on Rue de Strasbourg. So that was I would like to add that, okay? It wasn't like I was in Bel Air or Limpetsberg or something. I was in the middle of Gare, screaming people all night long, and I was like, this is okay.
Place.
I
this
can.
is the place I picture myself in.
Yeah, it was. So that's the reason. It's like, if I like that, I will like that. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
That's great. That's good logic. And who were you before coming here in Luxembourg, like in terms of health? Yeah, I would say it like this. In terms of health, who were you?
When I was younger, like middle school, early high school, I did occasionally sports. Like as every Turkish boy, I played football. I was a bit earlier. I played basketball as well. Not really necessarily in a very, like in a team environment with friends, etc. I wasn't bad at it either, but I never really had that culture, if you will. Like I was never a part of a club, or I didn't exercise regularly. I've always liked to walk, but I wouldn't really call myself sporty. When I was younger, I was very skinny. So it wasn't really a part of my life. I was mostly into like music and more artsy stuff. I still am, by the way. It didn't really go away. But I wasn't sporty at all. As I grew up with university and everything, I became a bit more sedentary. I put on some weight. I still walked a lot. I liked walk. I still like. I think I will always like to walk, no matter what. But I wasn't anything like now. And the last couple of years, immediately before I came to Luxembourg, my time in Copenhagen, I was still, I would say, sedentary, but I also picked up some not so good habits. I was maybe indulging too much in the social life, let's say. I wasn't really taking care of my health. It wasn't anything crazy or illegal or anything like that, but it was just, looking back, I could have spent those years much better, my 20s specifically. But I wouldn't say that I was unhealthy, really. I had some like bad habits or not so good habits, but I wasn't active, but I wasn't necessarily a couch potato. I spent a lot of time at home because I was doing research. Most of the time I spent in Denmark, I wrote my PhD, so you really have to sit down in front of a laptop and write, and this is also a very stressful, grueling process that takes years, 3-4 years you're working on this one singular massive project. So I guess that was partly stress induced. There were some other ups and downs in my private life, but overall I had a lot of positive things about my life. I had a lot of meh things about my life that could have been much better if I paid attention. But I want to say I don't really regret those mistakes either. I'm not saying this because I wish, I regret it so much. I think about it every day because the I don't want to sound like cheesy, but the rebirth, let's say, or the bounce back wouldn't be as strong if, do you know what I mean? It's like and I indulged in that sedentary life. I indulged in those not so good habits. I was like, yeah, this is okay. I don't think anything needs to be improved. And when you live and normalize that, you don't really see the bad things about that because it's your everyday, and you kind of lose contact with how harmful some things can be. Maybe not on a daily basis, but they, gradually from point A to point B with 2 years, let's say 3 years in between, when you look at that, a lot of things should have been done differently. I mean, I have lost so much time, I've lost so much energy. So I don't know, I'm probably just rambling, but I think this is how I would explain. It's a bit of a haze too. I don't quite remember the specifics anymore. But I was a very different person in many ways. In other ways, of course, people don't change in every way all the time, but in many ways, it's a different, unrecognizable, I would say.
But tell me, I have many friends who, for example, never realized that the habits or the lifestyle that they have can be harmful. And I have some that at some point they realize that there is something wrong. And you have a third group that always, that have grown in an environment where sports is part of life.
Yeah.
But what happened? Drive me through this. What happened to you to realize that you have to shift something, and the way you were living was not the right one for you? What happened there? Like mentally, what happened?
Well, it's difficult to pinpoint it to one precise moment in my case, but I can see a few contributing factors. Though for someone to realize, to have this sort of epiphany, oh my God, something dramatic usually has to happen. Something, and everyone knows exactly that moment, but the complete shift from one mindset to another is not limited to that event. So I cannot say that I was like this and then this event happened and from that day on I was different. It was gradual, The first thing I stopped doing gradually was that I started questioning my ways, and I cannot tell you why it started happening. It was towards the beginning of COVID. I was, having some issues with the relationship I had at the time, and it wasn't going very well. And at the back of my head, I knew that part of the reason why it wasn't going well was because of me, because of the way I was behaving, because of the way I was maybe a bit impulsive, maybe I wasn't keeping my cool, I wasn't thinking before I was talking, but I wasn't aware of that at the time. I didn't know that I was impulsive. I didn't know that I was, maybe not reacting in a way that I should. Maybe I was reacting too much to things that shouldn't have mattered that much. But at the time, you don't know that. And of course, that relationship ended. and it ended in a not in I mean in retrospect it wasn't abrupt at all, but at the time it felt like it ended overnight. And from that moment on, all those thoughts at the back of your head about yourself, you start thinking, okay, maybe it's time to self-reflect now. Maybe I should seriously think about the things that I should have done differently. Or, first of all, of course, should I have done anything differently? And then what should I have done differently? When you're, and again, it was an extra isolated period. I'm talking, this was January 2020, so just before COVID. And then the isolation came, right? So you have a lot of time thinking to yourself. Towards March, April, slowly I was going through those thoughts, like maybe, what is wrong? What happened now? I need to just sit down and think about all the things that I should have done differently. That didn't come suddenly, obviously. Slowly, more and more, you start more and more, the self-reflection intensifies. And in May, it reached to a point when I said, okay, I am on the couch, COVID is dragging me down. I have two options now. I'm either going to rise above this, blah, like it's just sludgy and it's dragging you down. I either rise above that, I just fight my way out of that sludge, or I just give in and sink, And I couldn't tell you how, but I chose the first way, to rise above it. And I remember at the time a friend of mine was trying this app Freeletics, and I was like, okay, that's nice. I should try that. And I started doing some jumping jacks at home, up and down. And the first days, Albus was freaking out, like, what the hell is he doing all of a sudden? Why is he jumping? And what is this? He was so panicked. It was so funny because he wasn't used to seeing me doing these things. Now he just goes to sleep. Gradually, towards the end of the year, things became clearer. I had low points still. I mean, it wasn't like this. It rarely ever, progress is rarely ever like this. It was like this, and this, and then this, and then that, you even go below the point you start, and then you rise above that again. I learned that the first year. And then you slowly start seeing some progress, you touch your biceps and you're like, okay, is that like the 2-pack? Like, slowly you start seeing physical things, and the mental clarity is supporting the physical product. And of course, that's just the facade. Behind it, the whole point is to clear that brain of yours, to have a clarity about life, about who you are, about what you want to do. So the trigger point was my relationship at the time breaking down. It triggered the process that exceeded that. It was just a trigger point, but it showed me a lot of things. And the first year of COVID was difficult, but in other ways it was one of the most rewarding years of my life. It was a year of self-reflection. It was a year of connecting with yourself. It was a year of like stopping the lying to yourself, like you just stop lying to yourself. You just like, you messed up in this and this and this way. Why did you mess up? Just don't start, don't deflect. You stop blaming the other person or the other person. You take responsibility for your actions. And more importantly, you know that you don't have to deal with everything in one day, exactly in the same way that you don't become fit in one day. It's a process, but you need to understand what the process looks like, and you can apply that methodology to everything. You can apply that to fitness. You can apply that to being a better person if you know that it doesn't happen overnight. So, but that's what I learned that year. And then 1 year after that breaking point happened, I came here. And the first year I continued with the working out, etc. And in 2022 I joined the Barbarian tribes, having doing everything else. But I guess that's another question, so I'm going to stop.
But tell me, there is always that trigger point where people realize that, okay, I have to change something. But at least those who process what they have lived that way and they realize that I have something to change.
Yeah.
So it gives the impulse to start something.
Yeah.
But what is very interesting is when it comes to, this part is more motivation, motivates everyone to start something. And then comes into play the discipline.
Yeah.
I would like to know about you, what systems, or how was the discipline? What motivates you? What discipline did you put in place to stay on tracks and keep growing?
I know the answer in my heart, but I don't know if I can put it to words. I know what motivation is, a good ignition.
Yeah.
But a lot of people rely on it as if it's something that can sustain. It can't. 75-80% of the time I'm not motivated to work out. Or, if it's raining, it's -3 degrees. If you rely on motivation, you won't go out. Because whoever says, like, unless you have a specific program, like you're building now, I'm going to go out and run and jump into some cold water because that's exactly what I want. This is a very specific situation, but nobody says, I love going out in freezing weather. And motivation is something that ignites the process. The process is driven by discipline, That's what I believe. And I knew this at the beginning as well. I was like, okay, clearly I cannot be motivated all the time. We are human. Some days you'll feel, how do I establish that? The first months, I barely remember how I did that. But I know that I stopped thinking about motivation. And that was the key for me. I was like, I don't care if I want to do this or not. I have to do, not have to as in like it's an obligation, but I want an outcome. It's a simple equation. I want an outcome. I want things to change. I don't want to go there again. I want to rise above it. Okay, what do I need to do? I need to get up, go on that mat, and move. Okay, that's all I need. And I just got up and did it. And this is exactly the part I cannot explain how I did it. I don't know. But I knew what had to be done. I didn't ask myself if I wanted to do it because I was like, this is irrelevant because there are lots of things that I want to do and are not good for me. So wanting something in that particular moment isn't something, it's a luxury I don't have. I have to do this. It must be done. If you want something done, the easiest way is to do it. That's how the first couple of months went. And slowly, as I was starting to sort of see the results, I was like, oh, this is actually working. And that was when I started feeling the nice kick of dopamine mixed with motivation, which gave me a bit of a boost. I was like, okay, I'm doing it, and I can see results. I feel the clarity in my mind. Okay, let's keep going. And 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And it's so funny, the whole process unfolding around you. As I said, like I was doing it automatically at some point. I was like, it's 7 p.m. I have 25 minutes of session with Freeletics. I do my heats and I was like, running out of breath. And as you see, as I said, Albus was freaking out. Like he wasn't, and I was realizing that he was less and less reactive to that because he was also getting used to that, So we were starting to build this routine. That was also very interesting. Visual trigger for me to see that he got used to this because I'm doing it regularly. Every day he's less reactive to it. It was a very interesting progress tracker for me. I don't know if it makes sense. It was very unexpected. Obviously you cannot plan something like this. And you look at yourself in the mirror, you literally feel the clarity, like this foggy, cloudy sensation is slowly disappearing from your mind. And I was like, okay, this is the right thing to do. I need to keep doing this. I enjoy it, and I enjoyed it more, and I enjoyed it more. Things became a bit easier, and then the moment they became easier, I increased the intensity, and it became easier, and I increased the intensity, and Albus was calmer and calmer and calmer. So we had this COVID process like this, and by the time the first year was up, I could not think really any other way. I could not think about a day where I woke up and I wouldn't do this, because it was like having a morning coffee. So this is how it happened. And from that point on, I realized, okay, motivation has left the chat and discipline has entered the chat, because then you have completely disconnected your mind from whether or not you want to do something. Do you feel like doing it? No, it doesn't matter. You have to do this. If you want to do this that particular day, if you're motivated, perfect, but it's not relevant. Forget about what you want. And now I want to do it, so I don't have any problem. I don't have that dilemma anymore.
Yeah.
But at the time, when you're building a habit, it's kind of like carving something onto your skin. It's extremely painful, it's uncomfortable, but eventually it settled in, and in a way, I do like space law and stuff. Like,
Yes.
one metaphor I can make in that sense is that when you want to for a rocket to lift off, it needs an incredible amount of energy.
Definitely.
It's extremely harmful for environment. It burns a lot of fuel. It's costly. It's heavy. It's very difficult. Usually, most of the time, it will fail, unless you have a very specific way, if you know how to lift off. Liftoff is extremely difficult, and that's usually the most difficult part. And then if you can catch that sufficient momentum, this escape velocity, and you put something in orbit, you don't need the rocket booster anymore, because the gravitational mechanics do the job, and then you'd stop questioning how it works. It's oversimplification, but I think the difference between a liftoff and something buzzing around faster than a bullet around orbit without any booster whatsoever, I think it's the perfect metaphor. And this is how I would explain.
And then you arrived in Luxembourg, right?
Yes.
So back in the day, you already had those habits
Yeah.
set in place in your life.
Yeah.
And how was it coming here in a new country? How did you keep up with this, with having that environment that changed, new responsibilities, everything changed around you, but to keep up with those habits? How did you manage that?
Well, first of all, I was very happy at the time that I left Denmark. It was a moment that was I needed to leave Denmark for many reasons, also professional reasons.
Yeah.
And when I came here, it was for me. I said, okay, a new life, a new city, a new slate. Things can be much better than they were in Copenhagen. And much smoother, because the first year, this building process, of course, there were lots of lapses. It wasn't necessarily a very clean process. It was, again, it increased and it reached to a point where it wasn't very smooth. When I came here, I saw this as a clean slate. I was like, okay, everything I will do from now on, to the extent possible, it will be optimal, it will be right. I won't bring any bad habits from that life. And I managed that. I just came here. I saw Luxembourg as a city, as a small city. I like small cities. I'm from a small city myself, so I feel like I'm the happiest when I'm in a small to mid-sized city. So I realized that Luxembourg is just like it's not really a city, but it's also not a town. It's like somewhere in between. There's everything, but there's one of everything. But there's everything. There's nature, there's city, there are nice people, it's an international environment. What is not to like? What is there not to like? And I kept the good habits. I kept, my workouts, etc. All the good things that I carried over. and I left the bad things behind, and I never looked back. The first time I came here, there was the COVID curfew still, so you had to be home by 11, or it was still a bit weird, awkward period. I was just doing home workouts at the time. I didn't do anything outside. I didn't run. It wasn't a thing. I didn't even think about running. That came later.
That came later.
Later in 2021, yes. But I wasn't running, so I spent a lot of time home. I went out for a lot of walks. With my dog. I enjoyed the nature. I was in the valley every day, and it was very quick for me to build a habit. But at the beginning, it was COVID, and I didn't really know where to go look for friends or anything.
Yeah.
But again, I also feel like I didn't really feel the need at the time to go out and socialize, look for friends, because I was so immersed in that self-reflection still. I just enjoyed it, I just kept on sort of tapping into that habit of self-reflection. I was reading a lot at the time. I was writing a lot, and I was just training a lot. I was sleeping quite well. So, yeah, that year was around August 2021. That's how it was, and then I started running. I met Hannah. So things sort of changed a bit from that point on, for the good. It has always been so far. Luxembourg the changes have always been for the good here. So yeah, it was an extension of the good things that I had started developing in Copenhagen, and completely discharging the things that I wasn't very happy about. And another interesting thing about leaving bad habits behind is when you actually leave the place at which you developed bad habits, it's easier. I don't think if I had spent 2021 in Denmark, I don't think the change would have been so easy for me. But I came here, I was like, completely new visual environment, everything is different, new apartment, new job, new city. And then you can leave things a bit easier. If I had been in the same apartment, with the same triggers, the same context, that may or may not trigger all bad memories, etc. So at the time, it was a blessing for me to come here.
Change your environment.
Changing
your
environment.
life.
Yeah, I know that doesn't work for everybody. Some people like to stay where they're familiar with, no matter how bad their experiences might be. But for me, every now and then, I need to change locations. This doesn't have to be like living in a city and then moving to another city. Even like if you're in a city and then you go, it's not that different from going on a vacation, resetting your mind and sort of changing the triggers and coming back. It's just a bit longer term than that. But for me, I think that's what happened.
And tell me, at a certain point of age, I'm talking with my friends, they say it's more challenging to make new friends, make new connection. How was it for you when you arrived here in Luxembourg and you opened up, I would say, to the world socially, and were not that much into introspection?
I think generally I would agree that it becomes more difficult to make friends as you get older, but there are exceptions. And for me, Luxembourg has so far been a big exception.
Okay.
Yeah, but I feel like there are multiple factors. First of all, like in Copenhagen, it wasn't very easy, for example, because culturally, it's more, let's say, homogeneous. The environment I was in, there were mostly Danish people, born and raised there. They have their families, they have their friends already, so things become a bit ossified. Like they become, they have their life sorted out. They're not like these international nomads going from one country and then going to another country and trying to find new friends every time. As an academic, that's not something that I can avoid. That's what happens. At the time, everyone had their life sorted out. I had friends. It's not. I spent 7.5 years in Copenhagen. I had friends, but I felt like it was all very situational. Like it wasn't very deep connections, and it's true that it was difficult to find meaningful friendships. because no one else I felt was searching for something. I felt like, okay, maybe I can find some friends. Here, I feel like it's very different. First of all, the demographics here is very different. Lots of people in Luxembourg who are far away from home. Like, you know, you're from Belgium, I'm from Turkey. Barbarian tribes has how many nationalities? You love statistics, so I'm sure you have the number written somewhere.
A lot.
But let's say
I
50,
have this
okay?
written somewhere,
Like
but don't remember
40,
where.
30,
Yeah.
like everyone. We have Luxembourgish people, which is a rare sight, but we have everything. And everyone is here for a reason. And everyone's very open, everyone's looking for something new, because everyone's far away from home, everyone's far away from their families. So, in a way, I found it very easy to find friends here. But that was, again, it's something that I have to say. It was, again, thanks to the community that the Barbarian tribes has established. Outside the tribes, from work, from other places, I have friends, but it's kind of similar to how it was in Copenhagen, I would say. And the exception that I was talking about at the beginning is that you need to find, first of all, you need to have a purpose yourself, but then you need to find a group that is sharing in that purpose, and sharing in that purpose with conviction. A group that is geared towards the same goal, wants to do the same thing. This can be a club, this can be a book club, this can be a fitness club, this can be some other thing, this can be a charity, you know. But you need to find people who want the same thing as you do, who want to do the same thing as you do, not necessarily in the same way, but you have to have a group of people who have similar outcomes in the processes that they get in. This helps a lot establishing friendships, because it creates a camaraderie. You have a shared experience with these people that you connect very quickly, and this is something I didn't have in Copenhagen, and this is something I have here in abundance. But that's what I would say.
For you, how do you define friendship? Because when we are kids, we used to talk to that topic with Nelly, is that when you are kids, you have friends that you make with, like, it's almost like such a purity, and you connect, you become friends, and even thought you can go in a part of the world, they stay on the other part of the world, but still, when you meet 30 years later,
It's all the same.
know, it's all the same.
Just where you left off, yeah.
But no, when you talk about friendship, how you define that friendship?
I think we all tend to define friendship in our minds in reference to someone we consider to be a good friend. Like when you said, how do you define friendship? In my mind, I have a few people who pop up immediately.
Okay, yeah.
I think that's it's a difficult thing to define. I mean, we can of course define in general, in abstract, but of course you want a friend to be. First of all, you want a friend to know you to the extent possible, and you want a friend to be someone with whom you can be open, and that you can be yourself, and that you don't have to hide the bad things you have about yourself, because you know that you won't be judged, or you will be judged, but you know, for your own good. Because really, really good friends will be merciless towards each other as well, because they know exactly what you're capable of, and they will push you towards that point, and they will not give up because they know. And so a friend should also be passionate about the friendship. There should be passion. There should be a certain force between friends. You know, it's not just niceties and like, yeah, you know, if you want to know. If you think a friend of yours, a good friend, is not doing things that they should be doing, and they're like wasting their potential, or they're wasting their time, they're wasting their energy, you should be able to go to that friend and be open and confront them. Friends, good friends, are not afraid of confronting each other. Fake friends are, because they don't want, they don't want the unpleasant situation. Real friends don't care about unpleasant situations. They deal with problems head on. So, I mean, it's coming off as a very functional definition, but of course, underneath it all, friends should love each other, like genuinely love each other. There might always be some competition, there might always be some jealousy, there might always be some things that are not ideal between friends, and it's not always great. You can have a fight with a friend, etc. It doesn't make you less of a friend, because every human relationship is complicated. It's multi-layered, and perhaps ultimately good friends should be able to accommodate each other's least favorite sides as well. That that your good friend isn't exactly the way you would have them, and the same goes for them and you. But that's okay, and because you know them, and you know that annoying thing about them makes them who they are. I think that's what a friend should be like, at least as an adult. Like as a kid, as you said, like we're just friends with the next guy. It's like you just have a childhood friend. I mean, you're not you don't go out and like qualitatively assess who is your best match personality. Like you're 5 years old, you just like to scream and shout, and there's this guy, and that's it. But of course, as an adult, you have much more complex processes. So yeah, that's how I would. There are many things I can add, but more or less, I think these are the fundamental things that I would expect from a friendship.
Did you have here in Luxembourg any moment where you find yourself like down and motivated, and you had a friend, as you say, that pushed you, told you the truth? Mm-hmm. Hey, come, or hey,
multiple friends. Yeah.
Multiple friends. Could you recall one episode like this, one experience that you had?
Yeah, I mean,
because I tell you why. Because you have such an image in the group. You are the one who comes running. For the new ones, you come in t-shirt, sub-zero temperature, running, doing your training session, going back, very enthusiastic, running. So that's why I ask you if there is at a moment, some times where you felt human.
A lot of me, most
you
of
felt
the,
down, and
I would say
people had to motivate you.
There is not. I mean, if you think I leave, if you think I leave home here, and then like run here, or if, God forbid, to Philharmonie, because that's what I did usually. 3.5 kilometers uphill. Yeah. If you think I'm happy about this, you're wrong. I'm not. That's not. I don't. But I just leave without thinking. That's what I was saying at the beginning. Because if you focus too much on how you feel about what you're about to do, especially uncomfortable situations, you might not do it. And again, what do I have to do in that moment? It's 6:30. I need to make it to Philharmonie in half an hour. It's raining, okay. The only way right now for me to go there is to run. This is how it began. Yeah? This is how it began. I'm just telling you. That was one day I was late. I was 6:30. I was like, I need to go there. How do I go there? The only way I can go there is to run. Okay, I guess I'm running then today. And I ran. And I liked it. I did. I was like, okay, this was horrible. I mean, the running was, my hands were cold. But the moment I made it there, I was like, okay, this is actually a good warm-up, I wonder how it's going to be if I run back also. And then the same day I tried running back. And I made it home. I was warm, because by then you're so warmed up, like it's more or less 2 hours, 1 hour Barbarian session, and then 20 minutes, 25 minutes each direction, so it's 2 hour cardio workout. I came home, I was exhausted, but I liked it. I was like, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Now, I don't do it every day. Like, I still come here running. I go to Philharmonie sometimes running, but maybe sometimes I don't run back. Sometimes I run back also, but shorter. I adjust, you know. It's not like a typical recipe to every day, because of course at the end of the day, like, some days you're tired, some days you might have a knee pain, sometimes you might have had something at work, or you're not necessarily feeling motivated, but it's not all black and white. You can scale it down a bit. You don't have to cut it off completely. And another thing that I see a lot of people do, especially those who really, really rely entirely on motivation, is that the moment they're not motivated, they stop altogether instead of scaling it down. Sure, you aim for 100, but if you cannot do 100, you can still try to do 60 or 50. So that was also another lesson, that's also process taught me. I mean, the process taught me this, and nobody came to me and said, you can also do this. Those days where I was tired and I was like, the tram looks a bit enticing. Maybe I should just take the tram back to Hamilius, and then maybe I can run from there. Or I can just run until Glacis, or etc. So I just learned how to scale it. And on those days, I can tell you, like, when I was feeling down, when I was like having second thoughts about running back, at some point, a group started joining me on the runs back. Like, we started running back together. So that was a very nice thing to have, because I feel like if I didn't have that group running back with me at the time, I may have stopped that.
And how did it all started? That group. They saw you running and they say, hey.
Yeah, exactly. The best way to motivate people is to do things. That's also another thing. I have to say, they just see this crazy guy, like, it's raining and he's just running every day. Like, why is he running? We take the tram, and slowly, I guess some of them start feeling bad about it. Like, he's running. Like, I can't do that.
Oh, they were seeing you from the tram?
Yeah, from the tram.
You were running and
from the tram, and also, like, everyone's saying goodbye to each other. The session is over.
Yeah.
We did our and the photo is taken, and then I wear the bag. I was like, okay, time to run back. And people are like, why? We are done. What is he doing? And they ask it once, they ask it twice, they ask it about it 3 times, and the 4th time they're like, can I run with you? Where are you going?
Yeah.
I was like, sure. A couple of them joined. I think Saliu was one of them, and then Chris joined a couple of times, and then 3 people, 4 people, 5. There was a point we were 7 people running back to Hamilius. Some of them, it's also like a shuttle, the navette. You just go to Glacis.
Okay, bye.
You go to Glacis to people dispatch, and then you go to the center and there were days I didn't want to run, and the group was ready to run, and they told me, "What are you doing? You set in motion a process that chases you back." And in that situation, you're like, okay, it's bigger than me now. I cannot not run. And then at that moment, I don't want to run. I want to take the tram. No, you created this. You have to run with them now. And I think this is a good example, like in the context of the barbarians, that's how the structure supports you back. As you create the structure supports you back and lifts you up, and like, okay, you run, because this is how it is now. It's your fault. This is created now. There's no way out of it. So I think this is a good example I can give about how I was. I mean, that's not a dramatic example, but in some ways I think it is an important example how friends lift you up.
Definitely. Change it. We have, I would say as well, another sense of responsibility. It's like, as you said, you create something, and now the structure, it supports you.
Yeah.
Because at some point can be demotivated, but you don't have to drive this. Some people come and support you with the structure.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting point.
Yeah.
Very interesting point. I remember last year you did that 1,000 burpees challenge.
100 burpees. 100 burpees every day for a year.
Yeah, 100 burpees every day for a year, and then it ended up the last one was over there.
1,000 burpees.
1,000 burpees.
I don't know how I did it. I couldn't do it now.
That's why like, I wanted to
I don't-
to go back and reflect a bit about this. How
my God.
you were there, so
Yeah,
you can just picture yourself doing
Oh,
this.
I'd rather not.
What?
It was painful, man.
How was the experience? How would you describe yourself doing those 1,000 burpees?
I mean, for those who ran a half marathon, it was like running a half marathon with your upper body. I cannot explain it any other. It was like really it was like, you know, everyone who has done a half marathon or a marathon. I haven't done a marathon yet, but a half marathon, you know how it feels at the end, and this very specific fatigue you have. It's a very specific feeling. It felt exactly that, except as if I ran with my hands. It was a 2 hours, and I took my time because at some point it took me 2 hours. 2 hours something even. I couldn't tell you how. It was October 29th, 2023. Never forget that day. Over there. And it was like live cast on Freeletics Instagram page, and like hundreds of people clapping and other people doing it. Like we were sharing, like it was like a 4 split screen. And of course the barbarians here, like Valeria was there, Malek was there, Monzer was there, Christina was there. Like they were like joining in sometimes, and some were leaving and others were joining. I was doing my 350th burpee, 400, and someone else would come, drop their jacket off and do like 200 and leave, and someone else it was crazy. It was amazing. You know, it was extremely tiring, but the social element, the community support, it was an experience. It was amazing. It was like a little mini festival, you know. It was really like music playing, and you know, you're at like number 895, and they're like, "Come on, 100 more." I was like, "What? 100? I have to do 100 more? I've done 900 already." Man, it's hard to describe, but and as you said, like before that, it was 100 burpees for 355 days, 365 days. Yeah, I mean, again, it would be difficult without the community, the group of friends, the galvanizing effect of being a part of something bigger than you. I mean, because of course we are human, we like to share this, you know. I want to come here, and also another factor I have to say, because you know, many of the 100 burpees I did it here. I would come here if it's a session day. I would come here. I would do the 100 burpees to warm up.
Yeah, I do remember.
And then, similar to the running, people would join me doing the burpees. Like it was frost here. Frost, like you would with gloves, you would just go to the burpee, and the gloves would be stuck to the floor because it was ice. Like Alfio did it a couple of times with me. Then others, you know, to warm up. Some of them did 10, some of them at 20, some 70. A lot of people picked up burpees then. Like they was like, this is actually not bad.
That's a good one, eh?
So you know, it's another. It's nice to be able to share that, and that element of sharing the experience, to show people, look, I'm doing this. Why don't you come and join me? That kept me going. If I was alone and doing at home, without anyone to share except poor Albus, I don't know if I would be able to do it as consistently as I did, because I did it every day. Like I think there was 2 weeks I had COVID, 1 week I had COVID. I didn't do it that week, but the next day I didn't have COVID anymore. I did the whole week, so I just moved on. So that was like a 700 burpee day. So I caught up, you know. But that was the only hiccup. But otherwise, yeah, it was every day.
Talking about this, I do remember as well. It was the first year or second year. I don't remember exactly, but you're one of the first wearing a t-shirt in winter, and I asked you what happened, and I think I do remember we were at Philharmonie, and you told me like, I just did it. You know?
Yeah.
But
Why
what
not?
is it? would you tell that this is still that like curiosity that brought you to try this out? And if so, what impact it had on your life, and what is your relationship now with the cold?
So, yes, as you said, why not? Like that was
Yeah,
my
why not?
because I was seeing you were doing it all the time. You're still doing it. Like
Yeah.
I haven't seen you with long sleeve ever. I think like you just come with your jacket, this camouflage jacket. I don't know if you still have it, but then it's t-shirt, 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 t-shirt. I mean, if he does it, maybe I can do it too. And I did it. Like it was. I still like. I tried to do it. Still, like I just wear my gloves,
Yes.
but it's a t-shirt. I I mean, I was never. I like cold. I'm a winter person. First of all, I prefer winter to summer. As weird as it might sound. Also, the fact that I'm from Turkey, like a warm. But maybe I've had too much of it that I'm sick of it. Something. I don't know why. But I'm a winter. Not. I prefer sub 20 Celsius. 20,
Okay.
25. Like anything above 28, 29, 30, I'll become cranky and like, ugh, you know. So already there was this affinity to it. Like I like cold. It's not something that has bothered me very much. But of course, working out in the cold, it's a different ball game. It's not. It has never occurred to me. If the weather was bad, I would just stay home. Like if it's raining, if it's snowing or frosty, like just it's more comfortable inside. It was a painful process, but again, it was a process, and you need to know the process. The process, like Steve would love this. Process is important. You have to know how to build up to a goal. You have to know how to be patient towards that goal. Cold is the same. It's not any different. It's the same methodology applying to the same thing. The first couple of times, it was horrible. It was horrible. I was like uncomfortable. I was like, why am I even doing this? My raincoat is just there. Should I? But I said no. I mean, something's gonna come out of it. This guy is like evangelizing this. He's always with a t-shirt. I think he's trying to make a point. I'm gonna see this through.
I'm always in fond of learning by doing.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the
it.
thing, and because also like showing by doing, you're also
Yeah.
showing it.
Leading by showing the way.
We're social animals.
it.
Like talking is nice, but you have to show. You have to. People need to see you do it. If you're a trainer and if you cannot keep up what you want others to do, right? You're not a trainer. You have to do it. So, first couple of times it was horrible, and I have to say it didn't get any less horrible. But I grew accustomed to it. Still, windy, rainy days where we have the t-shirt in the moment, I am, like, it's painful, it's uncomfortable, but at the back of it, there's something liberating because, like, I'm free from this now. I'm free from this sleepy comfort zone. It's not relevant anymore. And that's a good feeling to have. And it beats the cold and the wind and the discomfort that the cold gives you, because the benefit, that liberating feeling, comes in return. That's an exchange. You're uncomfortable in the moment, but you have this sort of sense of liberation, the sense of immersion, but at the same time disconnection from the conditions around you. You're free from it. And in the long run, you learn to focus on the task at hand without being distracted too much about what's going on.
That's very interesting, because this is something I wanted to ask you. You've learned many things through the way, and always related to fitness, and I see it that way. Everything that I learn in fitness, like, it applies as well in my daily life.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
And how was it for you? And which things, I would say, which are the biggest things, like biggest learning that you have, biggest thing that you have learned through sport that you apply now, you see that you apply it in your daily life or at work?
What I just said, I think, is the first thing I would say. That you become very much driven by the objective, and distractions become less of they become less distraction. They don't distract you as much as it would otherwise. So you learn how to focus. I think that's an important thing. As I said, you learn how the process works, because without seeing a certain process unfolding, without witnessing the difference from where you start and where you end, you won't develop the patience that's needed. You need to experience that process. You need to go through a process. You need to work through something little by little, not with immediate feedback and immediate results every day you contribute to something, but you need to have the resilience to have the patience, right? You need to have the resilience and the patience to build towards something, and at the end of it, you look back and say, wow, this actually worked. But I also remember how frustrating it was day by day when I didn't see a change. And that's why a lot of people stop training, because they don't see immediate results, right? I think it's exactly the same in real life. Sometimes, some days, some weeks, some months, you'll feel like nothing's happening. You're trying, and nothing's happening. This happens to all of us. And I'm not saying it's any less frustrating now. It is still frustrating, because you still want things impulsively. You want things to happen, right? You want things to change when you're spending some effort. But then you learn that it will come if you keep doing the right thing. At some point it will come. Maybe not exactly in the way that you expect it to be. Maybe not in the way that you have pre-designed it. But something will improve. Some things will improve. So you become convinced. You become sort of embedded with that process. Then you cannot help but apply it to everything, because patience, repetition, consistency, they're good things. They're good things for your mental health. They're good things nutrition-wise, right? They're good things with your personal relationships, patience, thinking twice about what you want to do, like sort of structuring things as much as possible. But of course, like enjoying little things in between, and that these are not necessarily against the process. Right? I'm not talking about a grueling Olympian training regime or the processes that professionals have to go through. Like, we are social creatures. We are doing this so that we can better ourselves, not necessarily because we have professional aspirations. Maybe some people do, but certainly not me. So that the process isn't all or nothing. Sometimes you give 20%, sometimes you give 100%, sometimes you want to have a McDonald's, or sometimes you want to have a donut, whatever. Like, it's okay, but you need to contextualize it within that process. You need to know exactly when to do things. You need to know how to enjoy the moment, and you need to understand that this is not going to ruin the process if you don't turn it into a process of its own. So it helped me to structure everything in my life in that sort of sequence, that everything works as a chain of events, or that chain sometimes forms a circle. But it taught me how to think exactly in the way that I just said, like how processes apply to everything, and how they, even if we don't want them to, they just guide how we live, even if you're not aware of it. Process also applies to bad habits. It's independent from us. If you consistently do bad things, then something will change, but for the worse. It is a process too. So it's a force of nature. You just have to turn it to your advantage.
So you told me about bad habits that you have, like sedentarity. But if there, and you explained as well a bit how it changed, the trigger and the discipline, etc. But can you recall some other, for example, bad habits that you had, and how did you how was the process to get rid of those other bad habits from your life and build upon this new healthy habits? Do you recall some bad habits, bad systems that you had back then?
Well, I have to say, maybe it's a bit unusual, but the biggest bad habits I've had in my life, one of which was smoking. It wasn't a lot, but it's a horrible thing. I stopped cold turkey. I just came here because the first year I was in Copenhagen when I started freeletics, etc. I was still smoking every now and then. It was very much like, it was very low by that point, but I still couldn't completely stop. I don't know why.
For how long have you been smoking?
Like on and off. I was never like a heavy smoker or anything, but it was a social thing, you know. I just did it sometimes. I don't know, like 5, 6, sometimes depending on the day, 10 cigarettes, but it was never like 1 pack a day or anything. It never happened that way. On and off, a long time, more than maybe 10 years.
Whoa.
But I came here and I just said, I'm done. And I stopped.
Straight.
One day actually, that's also another interesting thing. That was, I think, the first or the second date I had with Hannah. So like September 2021, something like that. And I remember we were at my place and I was by the window and I was like, do you mind if I smoke? And Hannah she used to be a national swimmer in Germany. So like you can imagine the horror she had when I smoked. I wasn't aware, and then she told me later on. I was like shocked, and I thought, okay, I guess we cannot date. You know, I'm not gonna date a smoker. And at the time, I was like smoking maybe 1 or 2 cigarettes a day, and I remember how she looked at me. She looked at me with this utter disappointment. You know, I was like, oh, I have never felt more embarrassed in my life. And that day, I had my last cigarette. I said, okay, this is horrible. I was already, obviously, I was building up all the different good habits. I was working out 6 times a week. And that's also funny, right? Like, you work 6 times a week, you still like smoke a cigarette, 1 or 2 cigarettes a day. Like, what the hell? So that was the last piece of the puzzle for me, that someone looking at me in the eye with disappointment and a little bit of disgust, you know, like, okay, this is it. And that was September or October 2021, and never had a single cigarette. I didn't even want to have a cigarette since. If you ask me how, no idea. It was cut off.
That's powerful.
It was cut off. And this is not something I can explain at all. It was a stroke of like divine intervention, whatever you want to call it. It was like one day like that and the other, and I haven't smoked a cigarette since.
As you say, the last piece of the puzzle.
Because I know that, of course, it wasn't like, you know, you start building good habits. I told you about all the processes, you know, like you start self-reflection, you start learning about all the different processes that drive your life. You learn about the healthy habits, you educate yourself about your anatomy, about the foods that you eat, about how much, like, I didn't know about macronutrients before, right? So what protein, fat, carbohydrates, like all these different things you'll start learning, and you start educating yourself, and you learn how to think, you learn how to apply the things that you learn to your life. So it was already a process, and I was obviously feeling like this has to go at some point. It doesn't make any sense. You know, I don't even like it anymore. I'm just doing it as a leftover from a life that shouldn't extend here anymore. And I was in the middle of that process. Apparently I was at the end of that process. So when I saw Hannah look at me, okay, this is it. And that was it. So that's what I mean, the final puzzle, because that was the key. That was the difference between finishing that puzzle and that puzzle remaining unfinished. But there are other pieces of that puzzle, of course. That was just the last piece. that gave me the full picture.
Because that's a very challenging habit to get rid of.
Yes,
Smoking,
yes. I mean, as I said, like
the addiction,
yes,
the substances, and
yeah.
nicotine.
Yeah. I mean,
It goes far beyond, just sometimes just a
yeah.
willingness. It's about
That's true. I mean,
that
as I
requires
said, but I was
huge
already,
willpower.
like
Yep.
it was tethered very thinly. Like I was as I said, I was never a heavy smoker, but I was nonetheless. I would like go out with friends, and if I'm having a drink or two, I would smoke outside. But I'm very happy about. I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, you have the right too. Wow. Look, I have a last question. This is something that I guess you've thought about. You told about a lot. All that we've discussed right now. It's been a while now. The triggers when you moved in Luxembourg, all these adventures, and how do you feel when you talk again about it now for, I don't know, time in the bed, like 20th time, 21st time? How do you feel about?
Good. I feel very good about it because I am glad that I'm glad that I've seen the end of it to talk about it. I'm glad that I could compose myself in a way that I can sit down and talk about it and hope that someone might watch this and relate to it in some way and say that that actually makes a lot of sense. This is exciting, and that possibility makes me very happy. That again, ability or the possibility to connect with someone so that they can reflect on their own habits, they can think about how or whether they lie to themselves, if they think some things are okay but they're really not, and that they're not facing their own realities in the way that they should or they ought to. I think I hope, my hope is that my excitement is that someone listens to this or someone picks up a word that maybe I haven't even intended as a trigger and get triggered by it, and that will ignite a process that will change something, even if it's a small thing, for the better. Because I also have friends who are not with us anymore. You know, I mean, it's mental illness is a reality of our times, and not everyone gets to rise above from that sludge. Some people are just dragged down, and so in a way I feel very happy about the fact that I even get to talk about it. This is it, and it's a process. It's not done. It's still going on. I probably said process 300 times, but it's still going on. I'm still learning. It's not done. It's never done. You never you learn until the last day of your life. So I'm still learning. I'm still adjusting things. I'm trying to be nice to myself, but when I have to be tough with myself, I'm tough with myself. And you slowly learn when you should do which. So, yeah, I think this is what I would say.
And have you identified anything that, as you said, it's a process, and I believe it's true. We always have something to learn.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
always have to grow, evolve. Is there anything that you've identified about yourself that you would have to deconstruct? For example, this year in 2025, you know that this is something that holds you back, but still haven't identified how to get rid of it.
That's a very good question. We might need another interview for that. Well, I think in some ways I'm still trying to figure out. I mean, it might sound weird because I'm now 36 years old and I have a fairly established career, but I still sometimes think about how indecisive I am about like what I want to do going into the future, you know. And this is not only like professional, but everything. There's always this a fear of missing out. That when I started, again, I'll just give an example from the workout routines because that's the lighter side of things. When I started like weightlifting and working out with dumbbells, I'm always like, maybe I should just focus on cardio and high intensity intervals. And when I do that, I am more attracted by something else. So the grass is always greener for me, in a way, you know. So maybe I would say, I know what my goals are, yes, and I work towards them, but there's always this periphery attraction, like there's something interesting. I think that's also the same like professionally. Like I'm an academic, but I'm a lawyer by training, so I'm like maybe, you know, academia is nice, but maybe should I become a practicing lawyer? And I know the moment I become a practicing lawyer, I'll be like, research was actually amazing. So maybe that. I don't know. This isn't necessarily something to deconstruct, but I find myself always in the middle of things. Like I'm training hybrid. Like I run, I do trail runs, but I also weightlift. So I'm bulking, but I'm doing cardio. I'm a researcher, but I'm also practicing on the side, like to some capacity. So there's always like, the question then is, should I pick one or the other, or when should one keep the middle course, and when should one choose one or the other? I think I would say this. I mean, it's not like a massive thing, but I would say this is probably the thing that I must reflect upon.
Thank you. And the last one, if there is one book or one piece of advice that you have received, or a book that you have read that you would like to share with others, what would it be?
Well, the one book, if I had one book to recommend, it would be a book called Cosmos by Carl Sagan. And Carl Sagan was a scientist, an astrophysicist, incredible guy, brilliant guy. He was a planetary scientist as well, so he did a lot of research into, for example, Venus and Jupiter. And he wrote this book about cosmos, coming at it from his scientific background, but he explains it in such a spiritual way, grounded in science. And that book and other books that he's written, but that's a good point to start, that book really grounded me exactly where I am in the universe. Like, you have the atom, of course, and you have these super mega galaxy clusters. You're way too small for the galaxies, but you're big for the atoms. So at times when we feel insignificant, we must understand that we are not, because we are not insignificant. We are much larger than we think. But then at times when we feel too proud or full of hubris, then we must remember that we are too small. So that puts you somewhere in between. And that's the perfect scale to life, I think, to know where you are. And I mean, I won't spoil the book, but I think if someone reads it, listening this, with what I just said in mind, I think the book will make much more sense.
Yeah. Güneş, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very insightful, the conversation. I enjoyed it with
the weather.
Fresh weather here.
Yeah,
no?
see, like
we're outdoors, and it's winter.
And it's kind of raining, no? Like that goes to the point. It's raining. I didn't even realize. We're just sitting here, like, my coat is hanging over there. I'm naked basically. No, not a t-shirt. But I mean,
Oh yes, look at this.
okay, that's true.
Yeah, no, it's raining.
It is raining. All right.
Oh, it was so insightful. I loved it.
1
I
hour and a
loved
half.
the conversation.
Almost
Yeah,
1 hour and a half.
definitely almost 1 hour and a half.